Okay, so as we defined the 2D arrays to be array of arrays, a 2D array is an array of arrays. What is the number of arrays indicated by? The number of arrays in a 2D array is indicated by the number of rows. Now, what if I want every array to be of a different size? For example, I want to create a 2D array which consists of three arrays. The first array has three elements, or let's say four elements. Second array has two elements, and third array has three elements. Got it? I want a 2D array, okay? And inside the 2D array, I want to store three arrays. The first array should be with four elements. Second array inside the 2D array should have two elements. And the third array inside the 2D array should have three elements. Now you will say, how is it possible? Because when you do that in C and C++, 2D array, there also is an array of arrays, right? But every array in the 2D array consists of how many elements? That is given by number of columns, right? Every row in the 2D array consists of same number of elements, and that is also equal to number of columns in the 2D array or the matrix. You can visualize that. In Java, you are allowed to create every row with different number of elements. That is, every array inside the 2D array can have different number of elements. But in that case, how do we declare such an array? So we start with the code public class jagged array. Now such an array which has different number of elements on every row, or which consist of arrays, such a 2D array which consists of different arrays, multiple arrays, but each of them may be of different sizes. So such an array is called as a jagged array, or a ragged array, or simply an irregular array, irregular 2D array. Okay, but jagged is a fun name to call it. So let's call it jagged array. Okay, so creating a jagged array, first we'll create an array of just the rows. So int double square bracket jagged array is equal to new int 3, and then second square bracket we will leave empty. In the previous video, in the previous example of 2D array, we had filled the second pair of square boxes with the number of columns. So that is a regular array. If you don't enter the values, those columns will have zeros. That is a regular array. In this case, what we are doing is we are leaving the second square bracket empty. Okay, so it is up to each array. So each array can have different number of columns. So now we'll declare every array separately. Jagged array 0 is equal to new int 4, because we want first array with 4 elements. Jagged array 1 is equal to new int 2, and jagged array 2 is equal to new int 3. Now putting this in the players and matches scenario, every player may have played different number of matches during the session, during the season, right? So rows stand for players, and the size of the array for each player will differ as per the number of matches the player has played. Okay, so let's say first player has played 4 matches, second player has played 2 matches, and third player has played 3 matches during the season. That is the interpretation. Okay, now how do we fill the values? In this case, we can run a for loop. Okay, the outer loop is fixed. Outer loop will be for I is equal to int I is equal to 0, I less than jagged array dot length I plus plus. What will jagged array dot length be? Jagged array dot length will be, you can pause the video and you can answer this, comment this, and then you can continue watching. Okay, so jagged array dot length will be 3, because this jagged array has 3 elements. Okay, then I plus plus. Now every row may have different number of columns, because every player may have played different number of matches, right? So for int j equal to 0, j less than jagged array I dot length. So now jagged array I will be the data of the player I. So jagged array I dot length will be the number of matches the player I has played, and then j plus plus. So now you will take the input as jagged array ij is equal to sc dot next int. Okay. Now we have to calculate the sum, let's say. So again, for calculating the sum, the outer loop will be the same. The inner loop will also be the same. But every time in between these loops, you will have to reinitialize the sum variable to 0 without fail. Okay. So inside the inner loop, you will calculate the sum. Once that is done, you will calculate the average of the player and you will print it. Okay. And then when you go back in the outer loop, you will initialize, no, reinitialize the sum to 0 and reinitialize the average also to 0, let's say. Okay. Average initially, like average anyways gets assigned a new value inside the inner loop, so that is not needed, but sum will have to be reinitialized to 0. Okay. Now what are the alternative ways you can initialize a jagged array? So just like we had used initialization lists in case of the 1D and 2D arrays, we can say int double square bracket jagged array 2 is equal to 1 2 3 4, because 4, let's say, matches. So 1 2 3 4, 4 elements. Here we are not writing this or mentioning this anywhere. Just like we did in case of 1D and 2D regular arrays, we are simply giving the initialization list, and based on this list, the number of rows and number of columns in each row will be decided. So first has 1 2 3 4, second one has 10 20, third one has 100 200 and 300. Okay. Now you can also display, you can now, okay, let's also do one interesting thing. Let's say we want to pass an array to a function. So how do we pass an array to a function? So let's say we'll create one function which will take this jagged array we just created, and it will print the contents of that jagged array. Okay. So let's create a function called as public static void display jagged array. Why it should be static? Because it's in the same class as main, and main is static. So therefore, if it has to be called through main, if we want to be able to call it through main, which is a static method, this method also has to be static. It is void because it's not returning anything, it's simply displaying the things. And it is public because methods have to be public, only then you can access it outside the class. Okay. So public static void display jagged array, inside the brackets we'll simply write int double square bracket arr. Okay. And then you will write the nested for loop for int I equal to 0, I less than arr dot length I plus plus, system dot out dot print row I and colon, for int j equal to 0, j less than arr I dot length j plus plus, system dot out dot print arr ij plus whatever space. So, and then finally after the inner loop is over, we'll also print a new line character. So system dot out dot println. So therefore our array will be displayed properly. So that's it for jagged arrays. You can also print the players' scores and percentages and what are other statistics. Thank you. Feel free to explore the channel. This channel has videos on C, Python, Java, and even some ML shorts. Most of the content was as per the student requirements. So do share it with your friends or juniors. If you found this content useful, do like and subscribe. And if there is any CS, AI, ML, or data science topic that you would like explained, just drop it in the comments. Thank you.